Most movies want to make you feel something, to make you angry or sad, to surprise you or impress you. They want to move you with dialogue, characters, and moments. But these moments can't come out of nowhere. They have to be earned. So the horrific and gruesome death of a villain has to be earned through his actions. And an unlikely victory of a plucky hero, well, that has to be earned too. When they're not earned, they feel hollow and have no impact. One writer who I think understands this really well is Sylvester Stallone. And the best example, maybe in all of cinema, is the movie Rocky. It would be easy to look at Rocky as a simple, inspirational sports story of the plucky underdog winning the day. But actually, the movie isn't even about boxing, or Rocky versus Apollo. Boxing is just the canvas upon which the real story is painted. A man looking for identity and purpose. To figure out how Rocky earns its moments so well, we first have to examine who Rocky is. From the opening scene in Rocky, we learn quite a lot about him. We see that he's not particularly talented within his chosen profession, and that he doesn't take his training seriously. He's not very well respected by the supposed fans that came to watch, even though he won the fight.
You're a bum!
Generally speaking, he's friendly around the neighborhood, and he's also a pretty lonely guy, craving some kind of emotional connection. He lives in a very run-down place with little to no comforts. A place which, by modern standards, might even be called a slum. At the very most, he's had a very basic education, and most people wouldn't and don't consider Rocky to be a bright guy. He makes so little from his career as a boxer that he has to work as an enforcer for a local mobster, a job which he never really feels comfortable in but continues to do anyway. Rocky also seems to suffer from a lack of self-belief and confidence, which is reflected in the untidiness of his home, the basic and repetitive wardrobe, and his choice of love interest. Rocky decides to pursue a shy and very introverted pet shop worker whose wardrobe and attitude reflects his own, partly because the down-to-earth and empathic side of him sees a person waiting to break free from the prisons of their own personality, just like himself. But he also chooses Adrian because she represents the safest possible choice. Even if she does reject him, he will always tell himself it's because of her shyness and not a result of her not liking him. It's an attempt to make a connection while completely protecting his own emotional well-being. Despite all of this, Rocky has many redeeming qualities. He's essentially a good, friendly and empathic person, which is perfectly demonstrated in the only time we ever see him collecting for Gazzo. He disobeys his boss and spares Bob's thumbs because Rocky looks at Bob, a down-and-out nobody, and sees himself. And outside of the ring, Rocky is a pretty gentle character. There is, however, some frustration and anger bubbling just below the surface, even if Rocky himself doesn't understand why he feels these things. We get an insight into what Rocky values during this scene. While the bartender uses a racial slur to try and downplay and dismiss Apollo, Rocky respects the fact that Apollo worked his way to the top and doesn't care about his skin colour. Instead, he sees Apollo for his talent. This is an example of Rocky projecting how he would like others to see himself. Throughout the film, he's constantly searching for connection with Adrian and Mickey, and it's only after his first date with Adrian that we see a pretty big change in Rocky. He completely opens up and reveals all this information about himself. This is also the first time in the movie that Rocky is given a compliment.
It's a rap where you almost guaranteed to end up a bum.
I'll think you're a bum.
Mickey is a lot tougher with Rocky, and in the beginning it seems like he's hard on Rocky because he doesn't see any value in him. But later, we see that Mickey is actually disappointed in Rocky because he did see talent and he also saw Rocky wasting it.
Because you had the talent to become a good fighter, and instead of that, you became a leg breaker, some cheap second-rate loan shark.
The lack of connections holds Rocky back. He lacks in self-belief so much that even when he's handed a dream opportunity, he turns it down because he doesn't believe he's worthy of it.
I'm really a ham and egg. This guy, he's the best.
Even though what Rocky says is true, it shows an enormous amount of doubt in his ability as a boxer. On first viewing, it seems like the catalyst for the movie is when Rocky is offered the title shot. But actually, the catalyst for Rocky's story is in this scene. When Rocky is presented his first obstacle, he needs to let go of all of his anger at the rejection that he suffered for so many years. Years of hostility, rejection, and verbal abuse from Mickey could very well prevent Rocky from forming that connection that he's been looking for. Instead, he makes a very difficult choice. He chooses to let it go, to forgive Mickey, and allow that bond to grow. After this, he starts to take training more seriously, and we get the now famous Rocky training montage to show this. We see a big change in his mentality towards training, and the intensity of his effort greatly increases, culminating in the iconic step shot. The biggest obstacle to Rocky, and also his real moment of personal growth, stemmed from himself. Even after finally forging the relationship with Mickey and Adrian, after seeing people respond to him differently, appreciating him more, he still has doubts about himself. Except this time, he handles it very differently. He realizes that he isn't going to win against Apollo, that his conditioning and skill just don't match up. For characters in other movies, this is presented as a moment of fear that they have to overcome. But in Rocky, it's presented as a moment of realism that he has to accept. Instead of retreating like he'd done previously, he adjusts his goal and instead decides that he wants to simply go the distance with Apollo. During filming, the production had run out of money, and the director wanted to cut this scene. Stallone fought to keep it and insisted that the movie needed it more than any other scene. Like Stallone, I see this as the movie's most pivotal scene. It's the moment in the film when he becomes a complete character. It's in this scene that the famous Rocky Iron Will is born. The whole movie has been a struggle for Rocky to find an identity that he's comfortable with. He never wanted to be the local enforcer or the journeyman club fighter. He only ever wanted to be seen as the sum of his talents and the strength of his character. Throughout that journey, he has been rejected and insulted by his best friend Paulie, his mentor Mickey, the boxing fans that watch his fight, even teenage girls that he tries to help. Rocky has never been given anything. Even the title shot from Apollo is only handed to him because Apollo wants to exploit his name for publicity and sees him as no threat at all. He spent years receiving rejection from Adrian, abuse from Mickey, Paulie, the crowds, the people he works with. Every single thing that he has, from his relationship with Adrian and his connection to Mickey, are things that he has had to struggle and fight for. As a thought experiment, I want you to imagine how the story would feel if it were told from Apollo's perspective. And instead of seeing a guy beaten down by life and struggle through everything, finally be rewarded for his efforts, you see an unknown, out-of-shape fighter handed a title shot and almost steal it away from the greatest boxer of all time. That story wouldn't resonate anywhere near as strongly as being able to see Rocky's journey, his struggle. Seeing him maintain his good nature and honest character throughout that adversity sells us his story. So that even though he doesn't win the fight with Apollo, he actually achieves his goal, and it feels like a win for both him and us, because he earned this moment.